I think this is absolutely the most ambitious stop-motion movie attempted.
We wanted the film to be, really push out and be bigger and broader and bolder than other stop frame films.
What makes what we do different is that we really are integrating cutting edge technology into the mix. The core of the process is exactly the same. It's still just an animator with a puppet, lights, and a camera moving something through space and trying to evoke some sort of a feeling or an emotional response. We're bringing digital capture systems, we're bringing rapid prototype technology, we're bringing all sorts of things that enhance the experience. So it's a fusion of the craft and the technology.
This really is amazing. And if this is on a DVD somewhere, and you see exactly what goes in to these things, then I think you'll agree.
How do you make all these details? Why would you make something so detailed? How do you create a world?
I don't know.
We were seeking naturalism through the whole film, actually, the way we shot it, the way we lit it, the way we designed it. We wanted the real world, this world, to have a believability to it.
We knew that we had to go to the place where it was set. I always saw Blythe Hollow as a cross between Concord and Salem. So it's kind of got like the kitsch tourism, but also some age to it.
We Frankenstein a bunch of different towns together, so we're looking for certain iconic images in a small New England town, but we had to find it in lots of different towns and then kind of put together.
And we explored every nook and cranny of New England. We weren't just interested in doing touristy things at all, even though that is part of the story here, is this kind of tourist side of New England. We were interested in like the real kind of crusty bits, warped door frames and sagging eaves and rotten fences.
There were these houses that were just like all sinking and sagging, so we just kind of pushed that even further.
It was so informative, and certainly for Nelson, pulling together this world, every part of it is informed by going there.
Why do you have to go and get everyone involved in all your weird stuff?
We wanted the film to be kind of realistic in tone, but very stylized.
We just had to find a style that worked.
So Chris found this character designer who had virtually no experience straight out of school, Heidi Smith.
There was a quality to her work that was just so well observed and yet so radical. Slightly unhinged, messy, and brutally honest in some ways. As soon as we saw it, it was like, this is it. This is the one.
Her drawings had this quality that was extraordinary, but so weird and strange and unique, and we felt that tonally those things were fitting with the vibe of the movie.
And it did inform everything else. Everything else ended up fitting very well into place because of that. We found these real three-dimensional characters that are beautiful and ugly, just like real people.
Tragic and ironic.
It's a bit off. And that fit with the story, because I think it's in Chris's script, it describes Blythe Hollow as all kind of rotting around the edges, and that's apt for a zombie movie, the place isn't quite right.
You'll notice that there is no straight line in the film. By having everything be slightly askew, you see things are just a little bit weird.
We couldn't just build a house that was straight and clean lines and rectilinear. It needed to be oddly shaped so the characters look natural in it because they're oddly shaped.
They're very hard to do. It's not the kind of thing a set shop loves getting, is a set of plans where there's no straight lines, because the tools never make straight lines, but we did find a way to work that out. It's actually quite subtle at times. The beautiful thing about stop frame is you can really give it a lot of texture and detail.
There's an insane amount of detail that goes into every single element on a set, in a shot.
We wanted to make sure that in every aspect of the aesthetic of this movie, that it was something different.
In the end, you don't want to be too aware of the style. You want it to just bleed through everything, and then you immerse the audience in this world, and everything follows that code.
It's pushed back a little bit, but it's enough to give it a signature, unique feel.
great experience. I know there's always going to be DVD extras and interviews with people, and they say, oh, we had a dream cast, but we really did.
Having a story that we were very clear about, having characters that we were very clear about, meant that the actors could really flesh out their parts.
Things you can't quite explain. Strange faces peering through the veil.
Really, it's about getting all of the emotions and stuff that you do with your face and your arms and everything through the voice into the character.
They did something unforgivable because they were scared and they were cursed for it. Don't you get it? It was surprising to me how physically exhausted I felt after doing a session. We have to keep trying. We tried, and look what happened. But it was fun to kind of channel all of that in such a contained way because it just all pushed out through the vocal performance. Oh wow, that's great! Oh wow, that's great!
They're in a booth, with a microphone, and you really have to describe the whole scene to them.
And the whole screen goes white, back into the library now.
And then sometimes you have to just get in there and just shake them around a bit, or sort of, really put them in the moment.
Imagine that it's really lurching around now. Big potholes in the road.
What can I do?
That's good, do that.
We need to find out where the witch is buried. I went to the old graveyard, but her grave wasn't there.
For Neil, I get a bunch of energy because he's very energetic, and I try to be as weird as possible. I've been outlined a million times.
Because I'm fat, and my allergies make my eyes leak.
And the two toes on my left foot are joined together, and it's rough when I walk too fast. Oh, and I'm colorblind, which is, I can't see the American flag, which kind of sucks. I guess there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Neil, better start talking, buddy.
We're both huge fans of Casey's work. There was a quality to his voice that really stands out.
My voice is like this. I would say, hey, good morning, how you doing? Mitch would say, hey, good morning, how you doing? It's freaky, I know.
Guys, there's something moving out there. I think it's the zombies.
Hi! Oh, no, it's not. It's just grown-ups. Those are grown-ups. Guys, they're just grown-ups.
Ew! I was twirling my hair and batting my eyelashes. Will you help me? Please? So there was a surprising amount of acting, a lot of acting going on for just a vocal performance. Oh! This is awful! The zombies are eating everyone.
Yeah, Elf in the Zombie Slayer. I got you out.
The directors loved when I would go really high pitched, and they wanted so much of that.
Are they gonna try to eat our brains? Oh, thank you.
They gave me a ton of freedom. I got to improvise a bunch.
These actors, at times, they change the lines or they'd add a little, and I didn't care.
Don't deny it. Your family has always been artistic.
It's not a swear word, Perry. I feel like he's the master improviser, and so it was a little intimidating.
And what about your mother, huh? She used to hold weird occult gatherings.
That was craft night. But then when I got into it, it was really fun. One of the most fun times I've ever had as an actress.
And what's with your mom and her chocolate dreidel collection? She's got dreidels that are 30 years old.
She likes chocolate dreidels.
She doesn't eat them.
I actually worked with Anna, Judel, Tucker, and Chris. So anytime I got to work with them and run the scenes, it was really kind of magical because you actually got to react to what they were doing.
You're just like them. No, I'm not! You're a bully! No, I'm not!
And it was really cool to see that come alive on screen.
Let's see what happens. We're rolling, yeah?
We were encouraging Alex to really go for it. She was shouting, "You useless bunch of..." And we told her to just carry it on, and she did.
Oh, you useless bunch of...
It's a difficult one to talk about whilst remaining decent.
Actually, give me one that's even more bellow if you can.
Ah, you useless bunch of...
We're crossing a extras.
It's like method acting for puppetry.
Go and do a session for 2 hours, and the last half an hour is dedicated just to the moaning and the screaming.
You literally, you have a sheet in front of you that just says Vokes on it, and it says grunting.
Like this card says.
That's supposed to suggest like a dismissive laugh. You don't have to. What always happens is that at first the actor hates that stuff because it's embarrassing.
Everyone's laughing at me.
But once they get into it, they just go for it.
I know, get into it. God, get it off me, it's so cold.
So, Alvin.
Just seeing it all come together, these two different worlds of animation and, you know, acting, and you see them kind of harmonize and then come together in this beautiful, huge project in the end.
A stop-motion puppet is a real object, bathed in real light, manipulated by a human hand.
We start off with a 2D image of a character, and my job is to turn that 2D image into a 3-dimensional puppet, which can talk, can walk, can run, can emote.
I want you to try that again, but with conviction!
We have to then plan out how we're going to make that puppet move. We will make an armature, which is a skeleton, but we created metal, ball and socket joints, and sort of tiny engineered pieces, which is what allows the animator to pose the puppet frame by frame.
So this is Norman's armature. The armature exists to prop the puppet up and make it animatable. The idea is to make him be able to stand, walk, perform.
I think that the style of Leica is a certain realism, but I think what we've managed to get with Paranorman is a designed realism. This project has been incredibly challenging for the puppet department because the shapes and the sizes of the puppets are so extreme.
We've got characters that have huge necks. We've got that are a big no-no in puppet making.
It's really hard. You can't make an armature or a skeleton sort of as big as a big square puppet. And we've managed to get them working, and you'll see it in the movie hopefully. Big square things that look like they're never going to move can actually stretch their arms and move all over, you know, jump onto cars.
This is my moment.
Neil is adorable in every which way. We had this huge challenge that we've got to make, literally as a puppet, you would describe him as a ball on a ball. You know, it's like, how on earth are you going to get that to move and giggle and laugh? We wanted to make the most of his little belly, so we put a belly mover in there, so when he giggles, you can see it moving.
There's this mechanism that we came up with that's taken from guitar in this case. A guitar tuning device. Belly mover made a huge difference.
They always do stuff like that to me.
Neil's hair is made out of plant fibers and synthetic fibers. It's a mix of both of those textures and a lot of different colors. You can see there's even some green. And we clip a bunch of hair from these strands that we then hot glue to these little wires. And then once the end of the wire is sort of covered up, then we just wrap these strands, sort of making little roses on stems. Then after we have hundreds of them, we cut the stems off and glue into his head. And we refer to pictures of him to make sure that we get, you know, a big red curl and a little yellow curl kind of in the same spot every time.
You look nice today. I like what you've done with your hair.
What's really cute about Norman's hair is it does have its own little personality. There are those great moments when he is combing his hair and you see that it just sort of goes whoop and goes right back up. Norman's hair is made out of goat hair, and then we dye it using regular box dye that you can buy at the grocery store. It's two colors. It's sort of this darker brown, and then it has this ombre effect and this lighter tip. And then from these little, we call them shtuks, we make all these individual spikes. And I think there's over 275 spikes on one Norman head, all made by hand. and each spike is then hand glued onto his little wig cap, and it takes about just a little under a week to build one Norman wig.
I know that this seems crazy. Believe me, I am with you on that.
The thing that I think every child that comes into our workshop, and every adult as well, is totally blown away with is the costuming. The final layer on the puppets.
The detail is amazing on this.
This is Norman. He's wearing his favourite jeans and his favourite hoodie. He's got all his badges on his backpack. Got one there, one there, one there. And then he's got his little favourite key fobs here. We make everything by hand. Everything's hand-dyed, hand-painted, hand-stitched. So these are Norman's shoes, and they are made from this leather. And we colour them ourselves. They wear like real shoes would wear, so it's believable, and that's what we really want. We want all of our costumes to be
We're going to run through a little overview of what we do here in our department, which is the rapid prototyping department.
We're dealing with the head and the interior of the head and how to get that head to perform everything that the animators, who are our actors, need to perform through this inanimate object.
Yeah, and the way that we've been going about it is through replacement animation.
What did you say?
Replacement animation is a way of individually sculpting multiple different facial expressions.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Seriously. Where did you learn that?
Instead of having to push Neil's lips around and his cheeks and all this stuff with, say, a typical mechanical face, what we do is we just remove the entire face, and then we put on a new one that has just all the changes that we need in it.
Can you stop doing that?
We'll take a picture of that, and then we'll change it a frame at a time.
So basically 24 faces would make 1 second of facial animation, and we break those faces in half so eyebrows and mouths can animate separately.
That's how you get the most out of your characters.
Sort of like a very, very fancy Mr. Potato Head. You can change, the brows, the mouths, to get exactly the expression, the performance that you want.
I was merely inhabiting the room.
And it enables us to bring a level of sophistication, a level of expressivity that we really haven't seen in the medium before.
The old way you would do replacement animation was individually sculpting as minimal as 80 faces, as many as 800 different facial expressions. So over the last couple years, they've come up with very inexpensive and quick ways to take a computer design and 3D print it. On Coraline, we were the first company to take that technology and use it for animation. So basically, we were taking a rapid prototyping machine and taking each individual facial expression that a character would make and trying to print it out. So with 3D printing, we were suddenly able to produce thousands and thousands of different facial expressions, and we really pushed the performance of a replacement character. Coraline ended up having 250,000 different facial expressions. But one of the side effects with it is that by doing replacement animation, you really sort of had to sacrifice the design, because each of these faces ended up coming out of plastic material. They all had to be hand painted.
The color has to be exactly the same. The shape has to be exactly the same. They have to work perfectly.
We had to continually dial back the paint jobs because it became impossible to have blush on a face and have that blush be in the same spot every time. Because if you think about having a different face upwards of 12 to 24 times a second, suddenly you're going to get a lot of chatter if that blush is not in the same spot.
And because of that, you could not get a very sophisticated texture on a face. They had a fairly kind of uniform color.
It's not working. What are you gonna do, huh?
So Brian McLean, who's the head of Rapid Prototype, he started to look into the different printers that were out there and found there'd been a colour printer that was around when we did Coraline, but the level of colour that it produced was really not to a level that we wanted to use. But in the time, the sort of 3 years of working on Coraline, the technology, of course, leapt forward.
So we looked towards another type of rapid prototyping, called 3D printing, but it's color 3D printing. And it's a similar technique, but what color 3D printing affords you to do is build in the color into the model.
With this film, by infusing the material with color in the printing process, we're able to get a lot more varied texture, a lot more interesting things happening in the face. So Coraline had 13 freckles, Neil has thousands, and that allows us to have greater verisimilitude.
One of the other interesting things about the faces is because the color is baked in, we suddenly get this beautiful skin tone, beautiful skin light quality.
When the light hits the surface, it actually will see light shining through the ears, like you would do if somebody put a light behind a human being.
And so it really does give these characters a new life that we haven't seen before.
For real.
So when we get the model approved and it goes to a CG animator, they're actually creating in the computer each individual facial expression. This happens to be sort of a snarl mouth. They'll create a yell mouth. They're also sculpting the in-betweens to get from this to this face.
They bring all that stuff into the computer and print it out in a printer.
So the printer goes along, it lays down a little slice, a really thin layer of powder.
And what is that thickness? It's what, 7 times thinner than a human hair?
It's stupidly small. But then the printer comes back along and lays down another layer on top of that one, which fuses on top. And onward and onward, the table keeps dropping away, more and more layers appear until eventually you have a three-dimensional object.
Something like this?
Yeah, something like this.
And here's an example of a part that has just come off the printer. It's sort of encased in this very soft powder, almost like flour.
We keep trying to get him to switch over to powdered sugar.
So we can eat it, yeah.
Deliciousness.
And once you wash away and blow away the powder, and you take that face and you dip it into a super glue absorbs and really brings out the color.
You dip it in super glue and you let it sort of gas off and basically get as far away as possible from it until it's dry. And then you come back and then you throw it in the movie.
Awesome!
Being able to have a more complex paint job and really being able to not sacrificing the character design has allowed us to push Paranorman in a world of its own.
Rapid prototyping really has been the biggest technological advance in the medium in a generation.
And to be able to take an age-old, one of the oldest forms of special effects, stop motion, and be able to redo it with modern-day technology and modern-day designs and stories is unbelievable. It's a cool thing to be a part of.
Yeah, of course. Don't get weird or anything.
So usually during the animation process, we're shooting at 24 frames per second. During that process, we sometimes have to elevate a character or a prop, make it jump or fly through the air. You know, if you were running and somebody stops you and you're suspended at the peak of that travel, you would have to have something holding you up. So that's what the rigging department does. They hold up the puppets or they hold up the props. And we do that using very precise and incremental mechanics. So there will be wires and there will be rigs in shot and they will get painted out by the scene team. It's kind of like the strings on a marionette puppet.
Actually, we're learning about it in school.
This is Grandma, and she's a really good example of how the puppets interact with the rigs. She's a base of her. We have her on a swivel, so the animator can swivel her around and kind of get a real fluid motion. Underneath her, we have a rig that moves her up and down, and we've got side to side and front and back. We build these all in-house, and they give the animator a real fine, precise control over what they're doing.
I was never one for frolicking.
What we also do in the rigging department is we do some of the more specialised kind of puppetry. One of the examples in Paranorman would have been the toilet paper zombies.
Making toilet paper and how to animate toilet paper and how to make toilet paper work in the light. And he started off with just simple things like toilet paper flapping and worked his way up to toilet paper flying around the room. And then eventually he was creating fully articulated zombies out of toilet paper.
There's not a lot of reference on toilet paper zombies out there in the world.
the challenge of these characters was to kind of get them to look like they're made out of paper, you know, and not an armatured puppet.
You really need someone to focus on an element like that and really dig their teeth into it and get really passionate about it.
So here we have an example of one of our most extensive rigging jobs on Paranorman, and it was the sequence where the zombies rise. They're bursting out of the ground and there's soil flying everywhere. What we have here is a puppet that is rigged underneath the set, and it was a real challenge to kind of have them burst out of the ground and have all these kind of articulated pieces of soil that break up and fly across the set. And we also had a few little kind of plasticine pads where we could kind of apply scratch marks in the soil. So as they're clawing their way out of the hole, they can leave these kind of damaged pieces of ground in their wake. The very smallest thing that we rigged on the show was these tiny little pieces of zombie snot that fly out of their mouths and out of their noses. You might not necessarily approach a sequence like this with so much detail and so many physics through practical means. You might use a bit more computer technology. But I think what's really interesting about Paranorman is the way that they've incorporated, as far as it can go, the sense that there being real things on set, in shot, at the time of shooting. You get a live performance.
It's actually very simple. You generally start with a puppet that has a little metal skeleton inside, so you can pose it and it'll hold this position while you're moving it. And you effectively move it one frame at a time. You'll move it slightly, you'll take a picture, move it a little bit more, take another picture. And when you knit enough of those individual pictures together and play them, it looks like the thing's moving. These things come to life because an artist makes them come to life. And that way, it really is a performance art. It's performance art at the speed of a glacier, but it's performance art.
It's a weird combination of like acting and just being like an artist and observer.
I think the most challenging puppet in the whole film was probably Courtney.
OMG, you are such a liar.
The movement and the personality and the bubbliness and the poses of your over-the-top dramatic cheerleader, while we've all seen it, you know, nobody here has been that.
We were just doing Courtney screaming at her brother going, "Nana! Nana!" Just so we could get some really good reference for actions and movements and timings, actually. It hurts my stomach. It's quite nice not to just kind of do some silly kind of flicking the leg things, but actually to listen to the performance on the voice and do it yourself with your legs, just to sort of see how you emphasize different parts of the dialogue in the action with the legs. There is a shot of my hairy legs, which is my reference to Courtney.
Within an individual shot, I mean, there can be hundreds, thousands of things to keep track of, from bits of hair to an elbow to fingers to, you know, a jaw and a kind of flapping bit of skin to cloth to, leaves blowing in the wind to bits of mud and dirt, all that you have to keep track of in your head. The tricky one was the scene where the zombies rise from the grave. You want bits of dirt and mud and everything to be flying all over the place. With stop motion, all that stuff has to be supported in some way. It can't just float. You have to keep it in the air. And that means, putting things on rigs, putting things on pins, putting individual little pieces of dirt that can be smaller than the head of a pin on some sort of a wire or something, and then animate that a frame at a time. You'd be animating the hand, your pinky would bump a rig, or your thumb would hit a piece of dirt, and you'd have to start all over again. It was a nightmare. It's physically demanding. You're standing on concrete for long stretches of time. You're contorting your body in all positions to try to get access to the puppet. You know, you're climbing on the set or underneath the set. There are bits of metal that you're smashing your head on. There are, you know, razor-sharp bits of armature wire that you slash your fingers on. There's hot glue you drizzle on your hand and burn the hell out of your hand.
You've got to be kidding me.
You're under these hot lights. I'm on a set that I'm climbing this ladder on my tippy toes, stretching over things, not trying to bump them so my feet kill. My shoulders nice and hurt from reaching over this rock and holding this position for 8 hours.
It takes a special person to have that much focus to do that kind of thing. Crazy person.
Do I look crazy to you?
You become very reclusive. It's definitely not normal. I like it, but it takes you somewhere else in your head for sure.
I wish I understood you.
You don't animate because you think you could make a good living doing it. You animate because it's like a part of you has to do it. It's something that you love. It's something that you're passionate about. And it is something that unifies all of us on this crew, in this company, is that we absolutely love animation. We believe in its promise to touch the world, to tell bold, distinctive, and enduring stories. It's really a beautiful thing to behold and to be a part of.
Angry Aggie was the most complex character that I've ever worked on in a show, and it was the most collaborative.
This is a rare combination of stop-motion animation, computer-generated animation, and hand-drawn animation.
Rapid prototype, the effects, puppets, costume, art department, yeah, we all worked on it.
I've never worked on an animated feature where so many different departments came to play. There is a temptation to bring her all digital because you can really control it, and especially something so gossamer as this flying ball of energy with sparks around her.
We wanted to make sure that she didn't look like a CG generated character. Wanted to make sure that you had a real stop motion animator animating her and giving her that movement. But the directors knew that there were parts of her costume and her hair and whatnot that was just going to be impossible to animate on stage. So it became a hybrid process by necessity.
This is a piece of production art by Ross Stewart, and he literally just, spilled ink on this paper and blew it with a straw, and I love the ferocity of it and the intensity of it.
Ross Stewart made these beautiful ink paintings, and I scanned them in and vectorized them, which allowed us to cut them out with a laser cutter. So this is plastic visualization of his ink spatters. We were looking for ways to come up with that electric language that she has, and we were looking for some other stuff that was just as frenetic. And these are just microwave CDs, and they come out with these beautiful fractured patterns, almost like broken ice, but also kind of like veins.
My role on Angry Aggie was mostly related to an area called previs, which is a process where you make a sort of blueprint for the animation to be used as a guide by the animators. So I ended up actually sketching out a lot of these poses, possible things for her face to do, and it just sort of gives the people who are building the models somewhere to go. The shapes are so wild, they really wanted to get a lot of energy and a manic quality to Aggie. It's literally expressed in the tearing and stretching of her face, as if she's being torn between two realms of existence. The anger had to be real, but her innocence also had to be real, and therein lay the great contrast of her character.
The rapid prototyping department's job is to try to figure out how can we take this beautiful design and how can we give it the energy and the performance and the attitude that's needed. We knew that we had this potential to create this wonderful kinetic sculpture of moving Aggie and these stretching faces, and we pre-visited in the computer, but it really only came to life when you would print it out, put it on set, and light it. She's supposed to be this character that's very uncontrollable and sort of on the verge of exploding at all times. And when you just have that added level and that added sort of textural, handmade feel to it, this nervous energy, along with the lights, I think it really added to her character.
It was not like any other puppet that we'd worked on. We did have to mould the centre section in silicon. That's what we gave to animation, to film with.
Because Aggie's always floating, she always has to be rigged to really maintain that sense of flying and the agility that Angry Aggie has, and to put a lot of that kind of volatile energy into performance.
She's made of lightning bolts, and they needed someone who could draw animation to kind of bridge the gap between the really handmade puppets that you see the human hand has been involved in and the CG animation. I hand animated the lightning bolts that she's made of. And my brief from the directors was that the lightning needed to look like ink and lightning at the same time. She's this really angry child who has a lot of magic. It's magic.
Everybody's probably thinking, what on earth are those green rods sticking out of Aggie? VFX worked on all of the fabrics and all of the hair. So these are for VFX to track. She was sort of like this internally glowing sort of thing, this energy force.
You have to choreograph all that movement to be part of personality as well. You know, is it fast?
This environment and this way of making films is its own unique magic. It's a magical play, it's unbelievable.
I think what makes stop motion really, really special is that you see the handcrafted thing on the screen. That blade of grass was made by someone. Those costumes were hand-stitched.
Yeah.
And I think that level of reality to it is something really bizarre and really wonderful.
The disparate group of talents that it involves is unlike anything else in animation. You have electricians, you have costumiers, you have sculptors, you
carpenters, metal workers, people who
mechanics. Such a great sort of bunch.
We're strange. We're oddballs. On some level, we're just a bunch of old people who play with dolls for a living. Misfits, nonconformists, dissidents of all sorts. It's a group of pragmatists and starry-eyed dreamers who get together to make things of great beauty that have real emotional resonance.
So, what's happening now?